Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the OFFBEND podcast. This is episode 5. We've got a good one planned for you today. How you feeling, Carson?
Feeling good, excited.
We're almost to the lucky number 7. So once we're there, that's the hump that most podcasters don't get over. So once we're there, we're legit. We're doing this for real. Until then, though, we're still just winging it, figuring it out as we go. But as we usually do, I'm going to start with some industry headlines and highlights. I have a good amount of them for you today because of the rapid fire format. I want to make sure I have enough to cover. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into those. So for starters here, we have Sinners. I haven't seen it yet, really want to see it, have heard nothing but great things about it. Sinners had a miraculously low, really low second weekend drop, only around 6 to 8%. Not 68, 628. So, this original horror film, drama film is really defying the odds and is on track to become the first original film since Coco, the Disney film, to gross 200 million domestically, which is incredible. It's resonating, for many reasons, but I've heard that it's a phenomenal film. I can't wait to see it. I don't want to speak too much on it just because I haven't seen it, but it's really impressive the box office run that it's had so far and the legs that something so original, what it's been able to do. Shout out to Ryan Coogler, shout out to Michael B. Jordan, and everybody else in this film. I could sit here and list off more people, but I don't want to leave anybody out, so I'll leave it at those two. Number 2 here is the strong performance of Minecraft, the Minecraft movie, and then the successful launch of Until Dawn. So both of these are good indicators that the video game to movie pipeline is still going very, very strong. Next year, we have the re-release of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, the illustrious Episode 3. Is having a surprising box office showing. It's been a very enduring film. The prequels and sequels alike are not looked on very fondly, but I would say Revenge of the Sith often finds itself in most people's top 3 Star Wars ranking, which is impressive. For many people, it might even be number 1, especially those of us, born in the early 2000s, kind of growing up with those films. And really relating to Hayden Christensen and Anakin and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, really happy to see that the re-release went well, and yeah, it's awesome. So shifting gears here a little bit, the Cannes Film Festival, there's a major lineup for 2025. We have titles from Wes Anderson, Ari Aster, Julia Ducournau, and Robert De Niro's honorary Palme d'Or, which is awesome. Next, we have the surge in the creator economy. So with 18,000 traditional jobs lost, more talent is pivoting to creator-driven content, which is a little bit different than traditional entertainment, but it is really cool because it puts more power in the hands of the creators and less bureaucracy involved. At OFFBEND, though, of course, we are trying to reinvent the studio model, so we don't have to have every single thing go through countless layers of red tape, but anything large scale like a production is always going to require some level of sign-off, so I do understand on both sides of those things. Moving off here, Lionsgate spinoff Starz. So they separated from Starz. They previously owned it, the premium channel, but they aim for a more operational focus. So this is a pretty big industry move. Largely, Starz is a pretty big premium channel. It's not quite HBO level, but it's up there for sure. So that's a pretty big spinoff there. Next is Hollywood's shift to overseas production. Obviously, it's been driven by regulatory pressures, but also just costs. I think a lot of the things that film overseas are because either A, they're set overseas and it makes sense to be on location, whatever, or B, the simple cost of it all. You can get labor out there for much cheaper. Out there, I say, practically anywhere that they're going to shoot. Even places like Vancouver, very film friendly, whereas, places like Los Angeles, very much not so. But they have a unique opportunity now to make it better and reinvent themselves for the filmmakers. Moving on here, we have AI's growing role in content creation. So obviously from script writing and editing to virtual actors, deepfake technology, CGI, AI is really reshaping how people are using this stuff. You know how we feel about that, but it is becoming more and more prevalent every day. And especially as things like the ChatGPT 4.0 image model, showing vast improvements in image generation capabilities. I think it's only a matter of time before we start seeing more and more of this longer scale content being generated by AI. And I cannot say that I'm looking forward to that because I don't think it'll be good content. I think it'll be very much soulless content that won't feel like it has the human touch because it doesn't. And I don't think that's something that a computer can replicate at this point. But yeah, that's the headline. Next, we have the Sinners studio control debate. So going back to Sinners, they had a film rights reversion clause in the contract could set a new precedent for creative studio agreements, but who knows? And then the success of crowdfunded projects like The Chosen. Personally, crowdfunding is a very interesting concept to me. I think it's really, really difficult to do well. You have to market the crap out of what you're trying to sell as opposed to just, scheduling investor meetings. You're trying to get it in front of as many people as possible to make their little micro investment, whether it's 5, 10, 20, $100, whatever. You just need significantly more people involved. So it becomes like a much larger marketing effort. Now, if it gets in front of somebody who really believes in the project and what have you, maybe you can get a larger check written in, but yeah, things like that. So next we have the notable casting. So Emma Mackey joins Greta Gerwig's Narnia adaptation. She's going to be playing the White Witch, so that's going to be pretty cool. And then lastly here, we have the evolving role of music and storytelling, as seen in BBC's This City Is Ours. I think it's really cool when stories blend music really well, or even if, music is a broad term, right? Like, for example, in Oppenheimer, a lot of the sounds were used to complement the feeling that you were getting in an intense scene, or you were seeing the bomb blow up. You heard certain things that kind of complemented that experience, gave you that ambiance, but it wasn't a bomb exploding. In fact, it was all silent when the bomb was exploding, but the kind of overlay, the reactions, the things like that happened in the film were very much complemented by the soundscape. Same for, another Nolan film, Interstellar. For example, one really good example I can give from that movie is when they're on, I believe it's Miller's planet, the water planet. When they're on that planet and time is passing a lot faster, you can hear, I can't remember the exact interval that time's passing, and that makes me a fake fan. I feel terrible about that, but there's a sound that you can hear that repeats at that set interval, and every time you hear that like tick or whatever it is in the sound, that means that another X amount of years has passed on Earth. And I think it's really cool when you can blend the audio into the storytelling just as much as the visual. I think that's awesome. But yeah, that's all for the industry headlines. Obviously, we try to keep those relevant and up to date, but we're not going to be able to catch everything. We're going to have some things slip through the cracks, but that's all for this week. Next, I think we should move into our larger conversation here. So Carson, I'd really like to talk today about why Hollywood is fundamentally broken and how we are aiming to fix it. I say we as OFFBEND, of course, as we continue to pursue being a much larger player in the independent, but also film industry at large. So the first thing is I'll kind of dive in and give a little bit of backstory, and then I'll hand it to Carson to offer his thoughts as well. But the first thing is why most film studios kind of fail to build the real community or, more defensible businesses. And what do I mean by defensible? Things like recurring revenue, predictability, trends, things like that really drive growth and value and sustainability, most importantly. Hollywood really isn't built to last. Most studios are just production houses chasing the next deal, chasing the next movie. They don't own their audience. They don't own their distribution. They rent everything. And that means they're kind of stuck playing a game that they really can't win. No one actually owns the relationship with their audience except for, I would say A24, but really even then, they're not the primary distributor of their own content. They have a platform where you can stream and rent and buy, but who really owns these audience connections and these audience relationships? It's platforms like Netflix, Amazon, the theaters, but the studios, they're really just suppliers of the content. So I think owning those channels and those communications and really that community aspect is fundamentally important for, making things more sustainable for the studio itself. We're obviously not here to make one good movie. We're here to build a studio that changes how movies get made and how audiences connect with them. And in order to do that, we have to be in tune with the audiences. And in order to do that, we have to own our connection to them. We have to be in charge of how we do our outreach to them, how we interact with them, and how they interact with us. How do we incorporate feedback into our workflow? How do we go about ensuring that the audiences are getting what they want and need out of us as a studio, as providers and creators of art? Are we doing enough to make sure that they are happy with what we are doing? Because at the end of the day, that's what really, really matters. It's not only to us, but to everybody actually working on a movie. It may not be of utmost importance to the studio executives in their ivory tower, but that's one thing that we'd like to change. But yeah, Carson, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. The current studio approach and the way that, audience interaction and thoughts and facilitating community is kind of like an afterthought. Do you agree that that's the case, or do you see that more could be done to interact with audiences and particularly with the films and the media, but also things like reviews and social applications and all that kind of stuff?
I feel like the main way a lot of these studios communicate with the audience is through marketing. That's how they build hype for movies. I think we're trying to change that. And where we're at right now, we're just trying to build the foundation to grow in a sustainable way. And I think allowing ourselves to have multiple revenue streams is like creating that foundation in a way that like it's going to support us if and when we grow. It's all just a matter of time at this point, but we need that foundation, and multiple revenue streams, like I said, is going to give us that ability to be strong at a certain point when the growth comes.
Yeah, no, and what I don't want to come across as is like we're telling the audience like, oh, you're just a revenue stream to us. That's not what I mean at all. And when I say things like owning the audience and owning distribution and things like that, I really mean we're not borrowing. The people that watch our films, we're not borrowing them from somebody else. Obviously in the theater, you're borrowing them from the theater, but people go to the theater to watch the movie. They don't go to the theater and then decide to watch a movie. They go there to watch a movie. And they usually know what movie they're watching ahead of time. Sometimes, you can go in and pick while you're there, but most of the time you go there for a specific movie. But, there's a lot of different channels and ways that you can see and consume and interact with film. I think there's not enough innovation in this space. I think, Netflix created the first real streamer, and every other production company has gone out and done the same. But there's nothing super innovative about that. And we're seeing a decline in, theatrical windows and things like that, which only hurts more for me because I am a person who strongly believes that a film that is created to be enjoyed in the theater is best enjoyed in the theater. And if you only give a short amount of time for people to do that, I don't think it's beneficial for all sides. But anyways, that kind of leads me to my next point, how to build an audience before the product exists. So I think looking at us now, right, where are we at? We are in pre-production for our first film, High Stakes. We are super excited about that. We have learned a lot. We have been through a lot. We have tried and failed a lot, heard a lot of feedback. We've had ideas that are great. We've had ideas that are terrible. Overall, it's been a massively encouraging and insightful process for us. But we're doing a lot right now on our own fronts, pre the movie being made, pre us even having any clips or stills or anything. We're having to do a lot of legwork marketing that now. You see this hat I'm wearing is the High Stakes cap, available on shop.offbend.com for one. And then, the post that we have on social media, the things on our website, it's all creating hype around something that doesn't exist yet. And given our early stage, I think that's fair to do and fair to say. But being transparent, we aren't in a stage right now where we can actively share clips from the movie or something like that. It's being shot later this year, and, we'll incorporate that later. But, looking at any great startup, they always build hype before they build product. Film shouldn't be different in this case. I think if we knew a lot more about what other studios and things were working on, besides the biggest ones, if more smaller indies got some, press headlines about what they were specifically working on, I think, we'd be better off for it. The hype would build all around. You hear about a cool movie concept. Oh, that sounds awesome. I'm going to follow that. I'm going to follow that studio. I'm going to follow that movie social. It allows you to build an audience and a community before the product is even established. It allows you to create opportunities for you to interact with and build the audience into the feedback cycle. If they really respond and resonate to something that you say and share about the project, that's good. We should keep that in. If you say something about the project and they're like, I'm not so sure about that, you can A, trust your gut, be like, okay, I think they're going to like this once they actually see it, which is cool. Or B, you can say, you know what, after looking at this again, I agree. I don't think I would really like this either. And that's okay too. I think the really important thing is we just need to ensure that we aren't misleading anybody, especially, building, like saying something before it exists. We don't want to give false hope or false information. But I think it's great that we can foster community before we actually have the film made. If the audience only hears about the project when the trailer drops, we're too late on that. Right now when a major studio project is greenlit, we hear about it before it ever even starts, any part of the production process. There's a script, we hear about it. And people really don't back projects. They back movements, they back ideas, they back people. And that's kind of the atmosphere that we're building kind of on the back of the tech startup ecosystem. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. And I mean, Carson, I think you should speak a little bit on, the different ways that we're trying to interact with the audience. Obviously, like through the membership and the shop and then the socials and some of the ideas we've had with the podcast and things like that.
Well, something I just kind of wanted to add on was that it I think the reason why a lot of studios don't give out information on films is because of all things that go into creating a film, pre-production and production. That takes a long time. And you never know what's going to happen in between that time period and whether or not that movie is actually going to get made. And I think, like you said, you don't want to give out misinformation. So it's always tough for a studio to start that hype over something that isn't made yet. And you never know if it's fully green lit almost in a sense, because something could always be cut, or it gets to a point where they're way over budget and you can't even finish the film, and you've already like created so much hype for the film that you almost look in a sense stupid because you've given out all this information to the audience and now you can't even deliver on that information. So yeah, just like almost not wanting to give that misinformation. Like there's definitely like that certain point in production where you can start to create that hype. And I think we're definitely going to have to like find that if we do want to do that. And obviously there's time for us to figure that out. And when we do, it might not be exactly perfect and we'll have multiple chances to kind of figure that out and play with it. What was your question again? Sorry.
Yeah, it was just like all the ways that we're trying to build ways to interact with and market the contents and give people like the inside look and all that kind of stuff with the products and the membership and everything else.
Yeah, so we're just trying to build something up from the ground, and one way we're trying to do that is to create audience that wants to follow us. So like Kane says, we're trying to build up our social media so we can grow a following that way and they can see where exactly we're at. Right now we're posting a lot of clips from these podcasts, so that kind of helps give a sense of where we're kind of focusing on each section of the podcast, We're trying to create a membership where, well, I guess we've already created it, but we want that audience to almost want to feel involved in a lot of the things we do. So if they buy the membership, we can include them on a lot of the things we're doing. Is the Discord set up yet?
Yeah, we're still working on the Discord aspect, but that's another really cool way that we want to get involved and have a direct line of communication with the audience members, especially the OB7 members in particular.
Yeah, so just something that like communication between the members, the audience that has bought the membership, they can be included in there and voice their opinions. We definitely want our audiences to be involved in a lot of the choices that we make for movies, because at the end of the day, they're the ones going to watch the movie. They're the ones that want to see good films be made. Obviously, we want to see good films be made to a certain extent. We're making these films for them. And so having them give their voices and opinions is going to help us create the best product we can and get good reviews from them. And they can continue to watch our movies in the future. Yeah, what else? What else are we doing? Obviously, the podcast. The podcast is a big thing right now. We're trying to have our voices heard and on a lot of opinions that we have. As we continue to grow, hopefully our podcast will grow and we can change the way we do things with the podcast. Obviously, we could get to a point where me and Hayden aren't even on the podcast and it's actors from the film creating hype for that film, and kind of give an in-depth behind the scenes of some stuff that like usually a lot of audience members don't see because it's just stuff that doesn't get talked about or asked in interviews because interviewees don't know what exactly to ask. But if it's actor on actor podcast where they can almost create a story of what they did and what they liked and what they didn't like, it's something that can grow and change as much as possible. And I think that's something that at OFFBEND we want, is to create change but also keep things that work. So whatever works can stay, but also creating that change can help us grow in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Then the next thing about it is, what really makes a good film stick, and why a lot of them these days especially don't. We are in an era right now where mid is kind of the enemy. Not terrible. People remember really, really terrible movies. Yeah, I mean, at least I certainly do. Mid movies, though, they just disappear. They kind of all blend together. There's no real separation from one another. You watch a mid movie, you come away feeling nothing. You don't remember anything about it the next day. The characters meant nothing to you. You don't feel any inspiration or, heartbreak or anything. Whoever died in the movie, the death didn't feel meaningful. Things like that. They just disappear. But like, for example, and I hate to throw Netflix under the bus because they've done a lot of innovative things on the technical side, which I really value the work that they've done there, and I really think it's impressive what they've been able to do. But Netflix, when's the last time you quoted a Netflix original? Like, think about that for a second. A Netflix original film. When's the last time you quoted that movie or brought that movie up in a conversation? Like, oh man, that was so awesome. And I don't mean TV shows because they can do TV shows decently well. I mean a movie, a feature-length film production. Now take a step back and think about your favorite movies and what kinds of characters and things that they had. I know Carson and I have discussed in our very first episode, which go back to watch it if you haven't seen it already. We discussed in our first episode what our favorite movies were. And for Carson, it was The Shawshank Redemption. And for myself, it was Interstellar. And those movies are deeply emotional, deeply impactful. The characters are really, really interesting and compelling, and they make you want to root for them for one reason or another. They are interesting, intriguing. Something about them just, makes you want to watch them and see them on screen. It's a total differentiation when you're just churning things out because you want to have a content library versus when you're churning things out because you really like and value film and you want to make good things and you want to make cool things. And I don't know. I think there's a huge, huge opportunity there to make people care. Again, movies stick when they feel personal. I mean, that's the bottom line. When they feel like they were given when they feel like they were given a real shot, they were given hard work and dedication and blood, sweat, and tears. And bottom line, when they feel like they were made by people who give a damn about the movie and the characters and, movie making and filmmaking as a medium, that's what matters. And I feel like there's a lack of that in today's world. I constantly reference like franchise films, but just because a film's in a franchise doesn't mean it can't be good, right? That's not the case. And that's not how I've ever felt. But I think when you're stuck in the franchise cycle, it's easy to put out something that's not as good because it'll already have the kind of, I don't want to say network effects because that's probably not the right term. That's more of like a, tech user-based term. But the network effects of having already, multiple simultaneous titles existing already that were good and well received and, people worked hard on them. Oh, we can put out this crappy one because it'll still get a lot of money at the box office because it has this logo associated with it. That kind of thought process is hugely detrimental because it makes people less inspired to go to the movies. And when you lose that, what really is there for the film industry? I mean, that is the spectacle like none other. There's no better way to watch a movie than in a dark theater, popcorn in hand, on the silver screen. There's just not. Yeah, I mean, Carson, I'm sure I can answer how you feel about this, but I'm curious to hear it in your own words, right? Like, what makes a movie stick for you? When's the last movie you watched that was like, damn, I really liked that. That was good. Like, you came away feeling something.
I mean, the movie that we'll probably review at one point, Warfare, is the last movie I've seen. It's definitely one of those things that it makes you really think about your perspective on life. It really puts things into perspective in a sense because the things that happen in that movie are all like real, based off of all of SEAL team, all of the people that are in the movie are based off of real people and their memories, whatever they can remember. And so it's one of those things that I'm trying to like say this without like really exposing too much, but in the movie, like shit basically hits the fan and that stuff could be happening right now. It was based in 2006, but stuff like that is happening in the world at any given moment. And when you're watching it, you're safe in a theater, like just basically watching this all pan out. But like I said, it puts into perspective because stuff like that could be just some normal like Wednesday, like bombs are going off, people are getting shot, there are definitely parts of the world that are not safe. And it definitely is a privilege to be in places that are safe.
All right, everybody. Breaking news, interrupting your scheduled programming. We had some technical difficulties, so apologies
Hey, it
for
was
that.
not my fault this time.
Whatever. It was my fault, somehow, some way. Thank you to our podcast provider. We're going to be working on a way to never have to use you again. But for now, we are stuck with you. Anyways, whatever past Carson was saying, I apologize for interrupting you, but unfortunately, it had to be done. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next topic, because who wants to sit and dwell on the past? Not me. I think a good thing that I wanted to talk about here was our roadmap, kind of the things that we are pursuing, things that we feel are valuable, and some of the opportunities we're trying to capitalize on. Obviously, I've talked a lot about owning audience, distribution, things like that. Those things will come with time. We're building up that foundation, the infrastructure for that from the ground up. But the audience thing is really, really important to us. We really, really value interaction with audience members. We want the people watching our stuff to be conversing with us, to be having an open channel of feedback, what we did well in this film, what we could do better in the next. Whether that's, during production, whether that's, the contents and behind the scenes that we provided the audience with, or maybe some things they'd like to see more, and things like that, things, hearing what the audience wants and us being able to actually act on those ideas is really, really, really important. Another thing is the infrastructure and the technical aspect. I think I wouldn't say necessarily that film is an afterthought or tech is an afterthought in the film industry, but I would say it's often a kind of bolt-on solution after something great is already built, or after something big is already built and existing. The way I can best describe this is what we're doing now is we're actively building tools, whether that's, software creator tools for film professionals, things like, we are just delving into the industry, fresh eyes, fresh perspective, but we're trying to use these tools, and we notice that, there's some things we'd like to change about them, so we're developing our own. Obviously, development work takes time. We're going to fine tune, but eventually our idea is to release these tools so that they are usable by industry professionals or, just audience members. We're building some social based applications as well in that space. But there's also, the internal tools that we're building to better help us gauge reception, or, how a movie will perform, or help us, spitball ideas and, really find one that's going to stick and resonate with the most amount of people, because again, that's the core bottom line to us. But yeah, that's kind of our roadmap. Those are the things, the merchandise, the membership, building more applications and technical interfaces to interact with the audience and our community, and really sticking the landing with that, and welcoming more and more people into our circle, allowing them to vote on the projects. We're building up an infrastructure to do that, having a specific application dedicated to voting on our stuff, which is traditionally reserved for like shareholders, board members, or whatever. We're opening that up to OB7 members and allowing them to have a real say in the kinds of things we produce. The best thing I can really relate that to is, off the top of my head, because I was talking about this earlier, Jason Todd in the Batman comics. He was the second Robin, I believe, after Dick Grayson. Tragically was murdered by Joker with a crowbar in a warehouse and then exploded. However, he was brought back to life in the Lazarus Pit by Ra's al Ghul and became the Red Hood, because he was, flawed after he was brought back to life. But he was already kind of flawed when he was alive in the first place, but he wasn't this bad. Anyways, my point in this is, audiences actually voted to have him killed off. They put out a poll and were like, hey, do you want us to kill this guy or not? And they said, yeah, screw that guy. He sucks. Terrible character. Let's kill him. So they did. Stuff like that's cool to me. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, except the audience collectively chooses what they see and what's put on screen. Maybe not small details like that we won't necessarily spoil or give away, but larger overarching things like, should we pursue this project? Should we pursue this? Would you like to see an adaptation of this? Etc., etc. I think would be really, really
It's
cool.
almost like a Mad Lib where they get to create their own story.
Right, yeah, and it won't be hyper personalized, at least not yet, because I don't want to lean too much into like AI stuff, but it'll be personalized on an audience level and on what our audience likes to see. And it won't be for everybody, but it'll be for, whoever voted on it. And whatever gets the most votes, obviously the data will speak for itself. And that's something we're really, really going to lean into is using the data that we have and the data that we collect and put together through all of these tools and everything, and, what we're able to find, and really refine everything so that it is a home run. That is our bottom line. But yeah, Carson, I'll let you give your final thoughts on the whole Hollywood and how we're trying to reshape it, and then we'll move on to our review segment.
Yeah, I think a lot of films nowadays, they lack the world building in a sense, where something that I like about films is, I guess it kind of depends if I'm in the theater or not. There's definitely a different feel from a movie, like in a theater versus at home, is like that world building almost, in the sense of like, okay, I'm in this place now. I can see myself in one of these characters, or like, I'm just a third person view almost in this world. Nobody can see me, but I feel as though I'm involved. I'm locked in on this movie. There are a lot of films that lack that aspect of kind of bringing in the audience, and I think that's one thing that we're trying to create is bringing that audience like love back. Like they love the movie because they almost felt like they could forget about what's going on in the world and just be in the moment in the film. And like I said, a lot of films nowadays are like don't have that, and they just feel like they're a regurgitated aspect of something else that's already been created. Just creating that world and almost living in it in a sense, because we're in the dark theater and all we're seeing is the film at that given moment. So just creating more of that and wanting the audience to be more involved in almost the creative process, but also more involved because they see themselves in that world in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's it for that segment. Really what it all boils down to is we are doing things differently. Like Carson said, we're going to take the things that worked and learn from that, but there's also a lot that's not working right now and hasn't been working in a long time, and we'd like to really, really ensure that those things are taken care of in a real sense. Tie up all the loose ends and make sure that the audience feels that they are core to what we are doing, because they are. Because you are. If you're listening to this, you are at the forefront of what we're doing. Every conversation we have, every deal we make, every contract we sign, every project we greenlight, etc., will be done with the audience first. It will be done with the audience in mind. With that, let's go ahead and move on to our review segment. Now, if you guys remember last week, 2 weeks ago, I said that we would do our movies this week. Unfortunately, I was the weak link here and was not able to see another movie yet. The cinephile in me is kind of hating myself at the moment because I just haven't been to the theater often enough. But I am going tomorrow, so we'll have one for next time. I'm seeing Warfare, actually, so Carson has already seen that. We'll talk about that in the next episode. Early spoilers for those of you who listen this far. But yeah, this time we're going to roll back and doing what we did last week a little bit. We're going to revisit the studio. Partly because Carson didn't see all the episodes last time, and partly because 2 more episodes came out, and I think this most recent one that came out is really, really interesting. So, Carson, I'll let you go ahead and give your insights. I believe you went all the way through episode 2, so you have 3 through 6 to cover, and then I have 5 and 6 to cover as well.
Yeah, so episode 3, can you give me a little rundown again? It was the episode where...
It's the Ron Howard feedback. The note about the motel
Okay,
scene.
so that's the motel scene. Episode 4 is the film rolling down the hill. So I'll give Ron Howard's episode a 7.5. I really like the aspect of like him wanting to put in something that means so dearly to him that like it almost ruins the whole film. Like he can't see past his own emotional like charge, I guess, of that scene, of that part in the movie. But yeah, it definitely is funny when he like ends up remembering who Matt is and like starts like ripping into him about like the note that he gave in front of all those Hollywood actors and producers and all that. And then episode 4, like you said, the neo-noir aspect of it was really interesting because it like changes up the vibes of the episodes. I thought it was really funny when he's like recording himself for his therapist, I guess. It helps him kind of come back to earth and calm down. But it's that aspect of like a detective like recording himself like for notes like later on, and just the way they film it of him like in the trench coat because it's cold at night, because they're filming at night. I'll have to give that episode an 8.3. I really like that episode. It definitely switches things up for the series so far. And then episode 5 is, which we talked about this. Episode 5 is the one where I can't remember the characters, Sam and
Quinn and Sal.
Okay, yes, Quinn and Sal. They're basically fighting for these 2 directors to get hired for this Smile ripoff called Wink, and they end up.
No, sorry to interrupt. I think they're both, the Wink project is one, that's Sal's project. Quinn has a different project, so they're directors for different projects. They
No,
want
I
to have
thought
green
I
light
thought
by the studio.
I thought Quinn has the director that she's like signed on to or whatever, or has some type
Maybe you're
something
right.
going
I don't
on
know.
between them, and the manager or agent wants her to get him involved in the studio, and so the way she does that is she sneaks him into the Wink project and try to make him be the director. But Sal, he already has the Smile director coming in to
Yeah.
basically rip off his own movie. And so it gets into where they delete each other's meetings and basically almost Sal gets fired because he almost kills somebody on set.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'll give that episode a 7.9. It's definitely a good episode, but it's not as good as some of the others. And then yeah, I'm caught up. So episode well, I guess episode 6 we can talk about together, or 5 and 6. We didn't talk about 5 and 6 so far.
Yeah. I'll dive into 5, and then we can both talk about 6 because I think that'll be a little bit more interesting to talk about. But yeah, 5 was good. To me, it was one of the less memorable episodes out of the 6 we've seen so far.
It's a lot slower.
Partly because, yeah, it's slower. It doesn't focus on Matt at all. I feel like that's a large reason why it
Yeah.
didn't resonate with me as much. Not that Sal and Quinn aren't interesting characters. I think they're both great, but I don't know. Something about it just felt like very petulant to me. Like it was like following kids in daycare arguing about something, you know?
A very immature,
Which I guess was
very
the point.
immature way of like dealing with like the back and forth for sure.
And then like the whole Quesarito insurance fraud incident, like what the hell is up with that? It was funny. It was well thought out. It was funny, charming, whatever. But it was just one of those episodes, you know. It's kind of like a filler episode
And
in my opinion. But I would give
who
it.
did
Go
Matt
ahead.
go to have lunch with or whatever? Because when they ended,
Hemsworth.
Chris Hemsworth, yes.
So that was kind of what he was doing the whole
Yeah,
time.
and that was like partially his secretary's fault because she has her password on her computer. So Quinn just goes and deletes the meeting with Sal's director, who's the creator of Smile. So when he shows up, Matt is basically headed out to meet Chris Hemsworth for lunch, and he's like, "What are you doing? You have this meeting?" He's like, "No, I don't. I'm going to meet Chris Hemsworth." So like that kind of
Yeah,
plays
that was
into
funny.
like Matt not being there, and it focuses on Sal and Quinn like going back and forth. But yeah, like you said, it's not as memorable. Memorable.
Yeah. Yeah. I would give it like probably like a 6.7 out of 10. I know that's kind of low given the other ratings I've given the episodes, but to me it did not hit as hard. But that out of the way, I think we can talk about maybe my favorite episode of this season so far, which is the Doctor Dinner Party episode. So it opens up, they're on the bed. It's Seth Rogen and his new girlfriend, the doctor. I can't remember her name. The doctor sums it up pretty well. She has never seen MK Ultra, which is a movie that Seth championed, I guess is the word that he likes to use. Matt championed as a studio executive and the whole series. And he says, you know, we need to watch this whole thing. She seems interested, but she has clearly no idea. She's not a movie professional. She's a doctor. So anyway, she invites him to this gala of sorts, which is like a dinner and an auction. You know, everyone's dressed to the nines. And while there, all the doctors start asking Seth, sorry, I'm gonna keep doing that, Matt, about his experience in the studio industry. And he's like, oh yeah, there's this and that and this and that, and you know, the whole time simultaneously, there's this. They're making a movie with Johnny Knoxville and Josh Hutcherson, wherein zombies kill people with diarrhea or something like that. It's called like The Apocalypse. So, you know, there's that juxtaposition, right? They're talking about, oh, my job's so serious and it's life or death. And no offense, Matt, but your job's a joke, man. And he's like, no, it's very serious. It's very serious. You know, that whole deal. So that was my best attempt at the Seth Rogen laugh. And the Seth Rogen, if you ever see this, I wasn't making fun of you. I actually love it. It's great. I swear. But anyways, they're telling him, you know, like, oh, your job's not serious and what we do actually matters. What you do is just kind of a joke. Like, I wish I had your job. It's not stressful at all. And he's like, no, it's very stressful. There's a lot of high stakes. Like, it's okay. Like, your job's hard. My job's hard. We all have hard jobs. All our jobs are hard. And, you know, they keep doubling down on it. Like, and anyways, he eventually gets pissed off and starts being like, you know what? if I were to get sick right now and get hit by a car and they take me to the hospital, you know what's on every screen in that hospital or every room in that hospital? You know what's on the wall? A screen. Why? To watch movies. And you know what? The man has a point, because I've never been in a hospital room except for a surgery room or an OR, I guess is what they would call it, where they didn't have a TV. So the guy's right. The guy's right. Film is important. And I think the thing I really liked about this episode is the importance of the arts being at the kind of forefront, right? He mentioned at one part, he was like, he auctioned, he bid 200K on whatever the golf match or whatever it was, which outbid like all the doctors. And everyone was like, oh, you're just being a dick, man. Like, why'd you do that? Like, that was so, you don't even want this. And like, he didn't, and he was just trying to be a dick, but he was acting like he wasn't. But then eventually it comes out, he's like, this is kind of how it goes. Like, all of us people in the arts with the money, we end up funding your little science projects. And I was like, that's hilarious. That's a real satirical statement there. But to me, it hit home because of what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to make movies because movies are important and art is important. TV shows are important, and other forms of art like music, and even branching out further than that, like paintings. All of it is social expressionism, and it is really, really important. And that's not to say that medicine's not important, but I don't think a world where this kind of expressionism doesn't exist is, one that's 100% worth living a full life in anyway. So, like, if I wasn't able to be creative and be freely expressive, would I be as happy in my life now as I am? Would I necessarily be, whatever? But, like, again, doctors are super important, and I'm not saying they're not, and I'm not saying that, Tom Cruise is more important than doctors or whatever. I just thought it was a cool way to approach this. But anyways, he ends up falling out with this girl because he just pisses her off. He's like starts getting on everybody's nerves, and everyone starts calling him a jackass. He starts getting multiple calls about the diarrhea trailer or whatever. It was just a hilarious episode. It was one of those like super cringy episodes, like, oh, why'd you say that? Or, oh, why'd you do that? Like type of episodes, but I really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, I'll let Carson give his thoughts, and then we'll both give our star ratings after that.
Yeah, I think the way they set up the whole episode makes a lot of sense because at the beginning, you can tell she just stayed the night, but you can't really tell how long they've been in a relationship. You can just tell that like they're starting to get to know each other. And she's revealing that like she never watches movies, like she's never seen MK Ultra. So then they're like, well, next weekend we'll have to like have a movie marathon and just watch all of them. And I think there's like 8 movies. So she was like awesome, like almost like she wasn't really interested to see them in the first place. And then when she ends up inviting him last minute to this gala, and like Hayden said, it's an auction for cancer research. And I think it's like kids' cancer. So a very serious topic. So it kind of plays on that, like they invited him almost to like get a laugh out of him. They're like laughing at him rather than with him, because as soon as he gets there, he meets the other doctors and they start asking him questions. He like answers them honestly, and then they're just like laughing at him like, oh, he's taking himself so seriously, but he's not serious at all. It's definitely one of those things that like they're so stuck up in what they do and that it's so serious and that it's life or death that they can't see the fact that Matt also has a very stressful job and that he does work long hours. Yes, it's not life or death. He even brings up that like people have died on set before, and they're like so confused by that. Like they were like, are you bragging that people have died on set before? And he's like, no, just the aspect of it being risky, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things that like they go back and forth, and then he ends up being like, making film is art and people need art. The world, like I said before, like they want that almost stress release of the world for however long that film is, because they are enjoying the art and want to almost see more of it because it creates that sense of a distant world that they're not in, what they're currently stressed about. But I really like the episode. It definitely shows like different ways of looking at film, and yeah, it's definitely the best episode so far. I mean, we haven't heard Hayden's ranking yet, but I think I'll give it an 8.7.
Really? Okay. I was going to say a 9.6 for me. Like it's about like that's the best episode of the season for me so far. I really liked that it took a step back a little bit from the actual on-set kind of antics and stuff, and really focused on, you know, what this career in the arts looks like to other people on the outside. I don't think that's really talked about enough, but I don't think, especially somebody who's not like actively on screen or directing the movies and can say like, oh, I directed this or that, or, you know, I starred in this or that, you know, someone like Matt, where he's like an executive, he goes lesser known in Hollywood. Maybe he's not like unknown, but less people will know who he is than Brad Pitt, for example. I think it's an interesting angle, and I think they did it really, really well, and it was funny, it was charming, it was cringy as hell. Like, bravo, well done. I can't wait to see the next episode. But this show's really good so far. I think it's one of my favorite shows that I've seen in recent memory. I don't know if I said this in the last episode, but it reminds me of a show that I really love. And you guys make fun of me because I talk about this all the time, but it's like, it's such a good show. I'm actually started watching it again tonight because like
Hold on,
it's so
before
good.
you. Oh, I was gonna say that. I was gonna say before you say it, I already know what you're talking about.
Yeah, sorry. Like it's such a good show, and the way that, you know, it's Hollywood, right? You're seeing Hollywood from the perspective of, in that case, you know, 20 something, 30 something guys, all friends with like an actor and, you know, an agent, whatever. And that's the early 2000s version. And you're seeing it, you know, now through this lens, through a studio executive on kind of the other side of it and a modern angle. And I think it feels similar in that way. And there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of good differences. But for now, I think, you know, it reminds me a lot of that. And I'm very fond of Entourage. And, you know, it's kind of a meme show, I guess. Like, people like to make fun of it, but it actually is a really good show, in my opinion. You know, some seasons are better than others, but, you know, it gives you some insight on what goes on in the industry. And a lot of it is dramatized. Of course, anything on TV is going to be, but, you know, there's a lot of things I learned from that show just by watching it and enjoying it. So, anyways, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I really like the studio because of that, and I love that it's delving more into the industry. And I think it's not too early to say this, but one of the projects Carson and I were workshopping for our first TV show was something similar to the studio, but also something similar to Entourage. It's kind of like a show wherein you're kind of following the early career of some guys in Hollywood. So it's an Entourage-esque show, but without the already establishedness of Vinny Chase. It's more about the grind to get there. So think if you took Entourage and then made like a season -3, so you could see what it took for him to get to that point where he's at in episode 1, and then beyond, obviously. But obviously with some spins and things like that, we have some really interesting ideas. That's just kind of a broad overview. I don't want to give anything away. But yeah, there's obviously a very soft spot in my heart for Entourage, and I like the way that this show kind of makes me feel the same way. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that like are unique about both, but I think the big aspect that like kind of helps connect them is that they are film related. I think it is kind of cool in Entourage, like seeing what type of movies he does and like how he kind of chooses them and just that whole aspect. On the opposite end of like the studio, we don't really see too much about them like creating, I guess, movies. They're more about like picking them up. Like in the first episode, they did the Kool-Aid and they picked up Martin Scorsese's film, who they end up just killing. But it's definitely interesting to see the two unique aspects of each and almost seeing how we could almost like take both of those aspects and use it in what we want to do for our TV series. So I'm excited to see what we can do for that. And I'm really excited to see where like the studio takes it to see like how they can like change up each episode and still like have that fundamental like idea for the series, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's trending in the right direction. It has a good lead behind it. You know, Seth Rogen obviously he's a guy that loves film. He loves making movies. He wants to get back to the way things used to be, where movies were just made and they were good most of the time and not some of the time. And I think something like this, where it's a kind of a satire on the industry at large, is a good step in the right direction. So yeah, I think that wraps up our review segment, really, unless there's anything else you wanted to say. But if not, then we can dive into our last segment here. We wanted to do something a little bit interesting today, a little game of sorts, and we're kind of brainstorming more and more ideas for things like this in the future. So if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments or reach out wherever you are. If you're on YouTube or Spotify or podcast or whatever, feel free to let us know and we can integrate your ideas or talk about your talking points. But this one is going to be called Greenlight or Pass. So the rules of the game are simple. Each of us are going to pitch a kind of wild log line for a fake movie in 10 seconds or less. The other then will have to immediately say greenlight or pass, depending if they would greenlight the movie or pass on it. There's no explanations allowed. You're not allowed to give your rationale as to why you would greenlight it or pass. So what we're going to do is we're going to alternate. Each of us have prepared ahead of time 3 ideas, and we haven't heard each other's ideas yet. So that'll be the interesting part. And maybe we'll break our rules a little bit after we're done with the game and just go in a little more in depth depending on how quickly we go through this. But yeah, I can go ahead and start, Carson. So my first one, I'll give the title and the pitch here. So the title is going to be The Last Blockbuster Employee. So the pitch is: in a near future dystopia where streaming has fully collapsed, the world's last remaining blockbuster employee becomes an underground kingpin, controlling access to physical media like Blu-rays and DVDs. It's a dark comedy crime saga with a vibe of The Sopranos meets Clerks.
I like it. I'm gonna greenlight it.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I just have the log line right here. It says, in a town where secrets grow faster than corn, one man plants a lie he can't harvest.
I'm gonna have to pass on that one. I don't know. Where is that even going?
Wow, okay.
Where's that even going? Okay. Next one here. No father of the bride, ... but it's a heist. At his daughter's lavish wedding, a blue-collar dad discovers the groom's family is secretly orchestrating an elaborate heist mid-ceremony. It's Meet the Parents with Ocean's 11 energy. Genre action comedy, tagline till death or federal prison do us part.
I really like that. I think we should almost make that a movie. So I'm greenlighting. It's funny that this next one I have almost involves sort of the same stuff, but not anywhere near a heist, so I'll just say it, and yeah, here we go. So it says 3 exes, okay, stay with me here, 1 wedding, okay, stay with me, no survivors.
I'll greenlight. That sounds interesting enough.
Sick.
3 exes, 1 wedding, no survivors. That's interesting. I know we can't talk about it, but I almost want to. I feel like there's not enough information. Okay, well, we can wait. My next one is title: The Influencer Protection Program. Pitch is going to be: when a viral TikToker accidentally exposes a global crime syndicate on live stream, the FBI creates a brand new witness protection division just for influencers. But keeping them offline might be harder than keeping them alive. It's an action comedy. Vibe is kind of 21 Jump Street meets The Social Network.
Wow, you put it together a great lineup. This sounds like a future slate for Offbend right here. I'm greenlighting all of these. 3 for 3. Okay, this one, I don't think I would ever greenlight this, but we'll see. It says, when the robots took over, one grandma refused to log off.
Of what? Facebook? I'm passing, bro. There's not enough context. I don't understand.
Yeah, I told you I wouldn't greenlight it. So,
well, I guess the intriguing one is the 3 X's. Like the 3 X's, one wedding, no survivors. Are they just gonna kill each other? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, I think one of the exes is getting married, and so he invited the other 2 exes or something, and no one survives. That's how it's gonna work. Everybody dies.
Sounds brutal, man. That sounds like a terrible movie.
No happy ending, just all death.
Yeah. No happily ever after at all, dude. That's terrible. That sounds like the worst day of someone's life, especially your wedding day. Jeez Louise. That was fun. That was a fun game. We should do more stuff like that for sure. Like I said, everybody, if you have any ideas for things you'd like us to do or talk about, please leave them in the comments. We're happy to work things out, and we're always on the hunt and on the prowl for how to make this podcast more entertaining. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Carson and I are having a lot of outreach and conversations and things like that, so hopefully we have more to share soon on our side, but hopefully today you got a little bit of insight as far as how we're thinking about things, how we're approaching things, and the things that we hope to do. But I think that's it, Carson. Right? I think we're done here. So thank you everybody for joining in again. Episode 5 in the books. 2 more to go until we reach our goal of 7. And hopefully we keep going after that. But the goal is 7. We're trying to get to 7 at least. But yeah, as always, thanks for the support. If you'd like to support us some more, please go follow our socials, interact with our posts. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to get your own high stakes cap to support the high stakes feature film that's releasing later this year, they are available on our shop at shop.offbend.com. If you reach out to me at hello@offbend.com via email, I'll give you a discount code. but that's only if you listen this far. And also, if you'd like to join OB7, it's at ob7.offbend.com. You get a lot of different perks. Obviously, free popcorn at the movies is the biggest one. It'll pay for itself. We're expanding the lineup later down the road as well to be even more worth it for the average moviegoer. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you again, everybody, for the support, and I'll hand it over to Carson to say
Yeah,
goodbye.
just like what Hayden said, we want the audience involved as much as possible. So if you have any advice for us or something that you think switching up would work better, by all means, let us know. We definitely want to have that communication with our audience, and we really appreciate everything that can come our way, and thank you so much for the support.
Later.